please state your name and the branch of service?
Jordan Tileson, Army.
And what was your rank?
I left as a captain. So I enlisted in the Army to start off with. So I was a private. I'd worked my way up to E5 sergeant or buck sergeant. Liked what I was doing so much that I took the commissioned path, was a lieutenant and then a captain, and then I had my fill, and it was time to go.
Where did you serve?
So I started in the National Guard, was part-time for 4 years on the enlisted side in the infantry, and then went the commissioned route through ROTC, and then and then I was on the full-time side, and I traveled all over the United States doing that kind of stuff, so it was fun. But yeah, and I think you got other questions that answer some of that.
Why did you decide to join?
I want a little action adventure in life. Grew up in a nice home and a nice family, and my parents were always very supportive of everything I did. And I think that there was just a part of me that needed a little bit more adventure in life, and that's what made me enlist. And in the infantry, because like, where are you going to get better action in the National Guard infantry? And yeah, so that was kind of neat. I played a lot of paintball as a kid, or I think the kids play airsoft nowadays, but paintball and GI Joe action figures really was like, well, it's gonna be cool. Enlist.
Love it.
Yeah.
Do you recall what your first days in service felt like?
Yeah, it was a little nervous. It was a little nerve-wracking, I guess you could say, because I didn't have any family that had served before me. So, it was, what are you getting yourself into? And I remember showing up to my National Guard unit before I went to basic training, and I had long hair, like not as long as this hair is now. Whoop. It's like I gotta look at. Like my hair wasn't it wasn't that long, but it was long, and I had an earring in, and I was just like, "What's up, guys? I'm here." And they yelled at me a lot because I, didn't know what I was doing, and I rolled with it and was, let's have fun with this, and I was that adventure I was looking for, and but it was nerve-wracking. It's a lifestyle. It's to go from one lifestyle to another that was very rigid, and to get into that, it was a little different.
Okay, what is one thing from boot camp that you will never forget?
Boot camp was I made a lot of money in boot camp. I made a lot of money because I was shining shoes and selling candy or contraband. I was kind of a troublemaker as a kid, and yeah. Well, and you could buy shifts, or like people that had fire guard, because you'd have to stay up all night, and then they didn't want to do that, and so you'd be like, I'll stay up for you instead for $50. And people would pay you that money, and I had just gathered all this cash. I had so much money, I bought my first car, like after basic training. Yeah, it was fun for me in that way. It was, like, you meet a lot of good people, and it was interesting to have that stuff. But if I was to say what's the memory, was like, it was that real start of entrepreneurship for me that kind of got me going, because I own a couple businesses now, and it's I would probably say that was where it started, was basic training.
I love it. What is the story that you seem to tell people from that time over and over?
Yeah, how I started my enterprise in basic training was just how it kind of went on there, and how I'd noticed where this need was, and then what I could do to fill the need, and again, a little bit of troublemaking to get into that kind of stuff. I guess if you were to say then, like, officer training, because that's, like, you go through basic training and you're enlisted, but then you have to go through another set of training to become an officer. And that's a lot more on management skills and stuff like that. And then you got to learn, because I went from infantry to armored cavalry or tanks, and so it was like I got a little bit smarter. Like, instead of just being that guy with the gun on the ground, like, rah, shoot something, That I was like, why carry my weapons when they can carry me? So now I got to drive my equipment around, and that was super neat to do that. And then they're tanks. Like, tanks are just, like, everyone loves tanks. It's really neat to go through that. But I remember being a kid, and my mom used to give me a hard time about video games as a kid, and like, you play too many video games, and stuff like that. And then I got to tank school. I'll just call it tank school. I got to tank school, and then they put us in this giant simulator, which was like 3 football field size warehouse, and it was just simulator after simulator after simulator, and like 10 simulators going this way, and then another like 20 simulators. So as far as the eye could see, simulators out there, and then each of them was just a giant video game. It was like each simulator you'd step in was the inside of a tank, and then every vision block you'd look through or the scope was a 8-bit video game that you'd play, and then we'd all take turns rotating through the different positions and fighting the tank, and then working together, because then they all could interact with each other and fighting these video game tank battles. And I remember calling my mom and being like, video games got me somewhere, Mom, yeah. I did really well. I did really well in tank school, and I always remember that.
Going back to officer training, so obviously that comes after basic training. So how does one decide to go through that? I mean, can you tell me the process of when you finish basic training to get into officer training?
Yeah.
Is that a legitimate question?
No, that is
right?
a legit question.
I've never heard of officer training before.
Okay. Because it's you have your enlisted side, and then you have your commissioned side, as they call them. So the enlisted ranks, and that's like private to specialist to sergeant, and then all the different levels of sergeant. And then that tops out at a certain point, but then there's a whole nother pay scale chart that's like the commissioned officers, and that's where you have your lieutenants and captains and majors and colonels, and then generals are on that. So, yeah, and I just leadership has been something that I always enjoyed, and several of the jobs I had as a kid, or I'd always worked my way to a supervisory level, and I enjoyed management, and then I enjoyed organizing things. And I mean, as silly as this, again, what can you tell kids? But like, I used to like toilet papering houses, and I was really good at planning, like the supplies needed, where to go, what routes, where the cars met, how this all went, and like, like everything that went into toilet papering a house. I was good at it. And people would always be like, they'd always want to go toilet papering, or like anytime someone wanted to toilet paper, they'd be like, go get Jordan, and he's so good at planning this stuff out. And then it was kind of like, as you're sitting there talking to career counselors and that kind of stuff, they're like, well, it sounds like you're planning a military operation. And I was like, maybe I am. And that's how, so I guess I thought that was, I knew when I enlisted that probably then ending up in the officer side would, was a route I wanted to take. But as these guys can attest, there's a lot more respect for officers that had been enlisted and kind of know what it's like to be on that bottom before they transition to the officer side. Because if you can go right in and be a lieutenant, and then you're sitting here telling all these kids and young kids what to do, and they're like, you don't know anything. Like, you've been in the Army for all of 10 days, and I've been here for years, and now this guy that's only been in the Army for weeks on end, or only a couple weeks, is telling me what to do, and I know more than he does. So, it was neat to kind of have that 4 years of enlisted side service and to work through those ranks before I switched to the lieutenant side, which also just added to the troublemaking that I had, because like then when you're a lieutenant and you mess something up, and they'd always just be like, oh, just say he's a lieutenant, like, it's okay, lieutenant, you're new and you don't know any better, because they don't know what your history is. And I'd be like, oh, I'm sorry, like, I don't know any better. But I knew what I was doing because I was a sergeant. So then, like, I'd go around and I'd be like, hey, I'm going to do this. And if I got caught, but I'd get caught doing something. And then if I got caught, I'd be like, I'm sorry, I didn't know any better, sir. And they'd be like, Lieutenant, okay, just get out of here. And they'd send me on my way. And then I'd turn around and be like, oh, I just don't know any better. And then when they would leave, and just kind of like whistle as I went.
Oh God.
Can't,
I need to
I
stop
can't believe
laughing
I'm like,
loud.
yeah.
This is the
is-
best. This is like, no, this is great. And we're only on question 3. What was your favorite food from the mess hall?
Yeah. Uh, so, and I think you asked this question. I did basic training. I did basic training in Fort Benning, Georgia, and no eggs, real eggs in the chow hall, and bacon. No, I can't tell that story. I mean, it's hard. Like I just things I will always remember. Like you have the chow hall and basic training chow hall, and it's very restrictive, and you can't have food, and you just go and they just kind of feed you whatever's there, and that's it. I remember being in Iraq, and for me, like some of the hard stuff was like you day or night was day and day was night. And so we'd do missions all night long, and then, I'd have to get up and I'd have paperwork to do during the day as the lieutenant on my first tour. And, you know, so breakfast was like dinner. And breakfast was always my favorite meal of the day. And we'd get out there, and, after you're done doing a mission on the road, and you'd come back in and you'd be like, this was the end of your day. And on good days, and you're either having a good day and everyone's kind of all happy and excited, and you got to end with breakfast food. I mean, who doesn't want breakfast food for dinner? Like, it's great. And if you had bad days, like, you had breakfast food, and that kind of helped cheer you up a little bit. And I always liked eggs, real eggs. I remember that, and I remember just, I wouldn't eat the powdered eggs because they had like these powdered, yeah, where it was just like, here's this bag with powder, and they'd mix water in it, and it's all in this giant bag, and then they'd set it in the water boiler, and it made this like giant, yeah, like one giant scrambled egg. And then they would like ladle bits and pieces of it out, but then there was a section where you could get real eggs, and that was a treat. And then bacon, which is just bacon. It's the greatest cut of meat. Like, what do like you get a nice New York strip steak. What do you do to make it better? You put bacon on it. So vis-a-vis, bacon is the finest cut of meat. That's a valid argument, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just, bacon and eggs was my favorite. Yeah.
Love it. So you served in Iraq. Is there anywhere else that you served?
I did 2 tours in Iraq. I traveled to almost every state in the Union, except California, Idaho, Hawaii, and Alaska. Surprisingly, those ones, because there's military bases in Hawaii, Alaska, and California. But I have been to military sent me to every state but those ones. So it was interesting. It was neat. And then I did a 3-month training mission in downtown Tokyo, Japan, and that was a paid vacation. It was one of the neatest experiences I had was being there.
What were you doing there for that long? Well, not very long. It's 3 months, but
Yeah, well, 3 months is still 3 months. It was a training exercise with the Japanese Defense Force, or JDF, and we worked with them to it was playing war games, very similar to what if this country was invading, like you'd have these different scenarios and war, and it was all this giant computer screen that you would see, and then I would stand there and react to different combat, and then I had a Japanese captain, and so I did the armored cavalry, and I was a first lieutenant promotable back then, so I was just about to make captain. And then they had a Japanese captain who did tanks, and he and I would just sit there during the day, and we would, play war games. Basically, it was like computer screen, and they would move the little military symbols around, and then I would say what I would do to fight that fight, and he would say what he would do, and we had an interpreter that worked with the two of us, and you just do different training missions like that. So I was again neat because it was video games, it was like this giant video game type thing. And then nighttime we would go eat sushi and sing karaoke, and he took me to see his family, and it was a super neat experience. I mean, I could travel back to Tokyo today and I will never get that same kind of experience and in-depth, like into the culture. So that was neat.
When was that?
Wow. 2000, 2008.
When you went around the U.S., what were those assignments that you were going to?
Yeah. So during my first tour, I did convoy security. So we secured logistics supply lines that were going into the country. And so we were on this tiny little base on the southernmost, like right on the border of Kuwait and Iraq. And military convoys and supply line convoys would like come up through Kuwait and meet us at the border. And then we had Humvees and other gun trucks, and we would attach ourselves to these 45 semi trucks, right? So you're taking a semi truck, and now imagine 45 of them in a row. The convoy itself's like 2 miles long, and we would attach like 3 gun trucks to it, and we would secure them or escort them to wherever they had to go, lead them to wherever they had to go. And then if they got shot at or roadside bombs, and protect them through those things. And so we did a sustainment push, which would just be from Kuwait to the next base up. But then we also did like the military arms, or we called them green convoys. So it would be like new tanks that were coming in, ammunition, intelligence equipment, all that stuff. And then we would attach, and then we would secure them to wherever they were going within the country. So there is literally no part of Iraq that I have not been to. And that was interesting. Met a lot of interesting people.
You said that was your
and
first.
I kept that line out, you know.
You said that was your first tour?
That was my first tour.
How much time was in between your first and second tour?
Year and a half.
Okay. What did your second tour look like?
No, it was a year. So it was a year and a half. Yeah, because second tour, man. Well, to answer your first question, so then after that first tour, I got really good at finding roadside bombs. And yeah, I just like, it gets crazy because all I did was like, when we weren't doing missions, I would just sit there and read through intel reports and find patterns for that kind of stuff. And so we would then drive along, and I'd be like, oh, there's been a lot of reports of IEDs in this area. And then we would slow down, and sometimes we'd find them the easy way, and sometimes we'd find them the not so easy way. So, you know, and I really enjoyed doing that. So when I got done with that, I got assigned to this task force that then went around to all the other active duty National Guard reserve units that were deploying, and I would then teach roadside bomb tactics, techniques, and procedures for what to look for, what to keep an eye out for, what to do when you responded, and then just have some of that experience. And so then I traveled the country doing that, and I did that for about 9 months, and I got a little burned out because, you know, it was like rock star lifestyle, you know, like I was home from my first tour, and you'd travel to a different state, and you'd meet up with this unit, and then you'd train them for the day, and then they'd take you out that night, and you would drink soda, a lot of soda. And then you'd wake up in this hotel room, you know, because you were there for a week, and then you'd be like, after a couple months, and you'd be like, where the hell am I? And so I did that, and then I was assigned to this random unit. That's where I went to Japan after that, and then when I got home from Japan, I went on my second tour. By then, I was a team commander, I guess is the best way to put it. So I had this random team. And we were again in Iraq for the second tour. We were a CAT team, it was called, Corrections Assistance Transition Team. CAT, C-A-T-T. Gotta throw the meow in there, you know?
Wait, can you expand on that?
So we went to all the different Iraqi prisons as they were, because the war was then winding down at that point. The war in Iraq was starting to wind down, and we were transitioning things from the Americans doing it to the Iraqis. So the SOFA agreement was coming into place, or the Standard Operating Forces agreement, where we were then giving control back to the newly formed Iraqi government. and their army and their police. So I had the assignment of my team then that they had formed would go around, which is crazy because I had no prison experience. I did tanks, right? I wasn't like Adam where he was doing all this cool prison stuff. And they're like, hey, we want you to drive around all of Iraq because you got experience, throughout the entire country. You've driven all these crazy places. So now we want you to re-drive around the country and go to every prison and evaluate it to say that it is up to an international standard, so that when we turn these Iraqi detainees over to Iraqi custody, that they are up to a international standard for prisons. You know what the international standard for prisons is? There is none. That was what always made me laugh, was like, great, what's the international standard? And they said, well, it's just... So I had to learn what prisons were, how to run a prison. Went to a couple American prisons as we were getting ready to go, and then it was just, yeah, that was interesting. That was real interesting.
So can you tell me some of your most memorable experiences? But first, sorry. So when was your first tour? It was
2006 to 2007, just before the surge started, if you remember that.
And then it would have been, your second one would have been 2009
to 10.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, wild times.
In a few sentences, can you explain your main job assignments for your first tour?
First tour, I was a platoon leader. As a platoon leader, I had 36 soldiers that were under my command, and I had 16 gun trucks, Humvees, up-armored Humvees that we used to drive around and attach ourselves to convoys and just tooling around the country of Iraq. 25 years. I mean, you're 25 years old. You've got enough weapons to level a small town, and you're hundreds of miles away from your boss. Just out there doing what you do and interacting with the local populace and stopping on the road and reacting to, combat and all that kind of stuff, and just out there, just out there on your own doing wild stuff, right?
So then you came home for that year and a half, and that was when you went to different units and taught them how to identify the bombs, the roadside bombs.
Yep.
And then you went back for your second tour.
Yep.
Okay. And then we have, so now again, can you tell me a couple of your most memorable experiences, whatever you'd like to share?
Yeah, we talk about selling candy and shining boots and doing that stuff, I mean, the camaraderie will always be the best part of it. And you're going to see my friends on this videotape, and these are friends that I've met since moving to Stoughton, and the friends that I have from that I still keep in contact with. And one of my best friends from we were enlisted together, this Ninja Dave, guy that we were talking about, and he's, like, we still do business stuff together, and it's fun. And those are, I guess if you were to say, where do my memories come from? It's all those memories with the friends, and that, you had your ups and you had your downs, and there's some huge low points that we can sit here and talk about. But if we're reflecting on the good, it is my friends that I have made from, and during and after the service that have really made all of that worthwhile.
Thank you.
Oh, she's gonna cry now.
No, that was beautiful. No, that was really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. When your service ended, what did you do in the days and weeks afterward?
Yeah. Got home from the first tour, and when I got home from that, we did an epic road trip. I didn't do Vegas and VFW. I did Kissimmee, Florida. Kissimmee, Florida, with two of the other lieutenants I was on that tour with. We had a fun road trip. We drove down there, had a wild week, which was super fun. But I had a difficult time adjusting when I came back, being a combat soldier, and seeing and doing some wild things. And before my next assignment, then the roadside bomb teaching, I had I think a month and a half between that, and we did like this 2-week road trip, and then I had a month to chill out, and I couldn't. I was just having a hard. I went to the woods. Like, as goofy as that sounds, I had a friend with a cabin, or technically it was a family cabin, and I just went up there and I decompressed and hunting, fishing, and just kind of hung out for a while and trying to get back. I remember how cold it was. I remember coming back, and you have to think, like, Iraq during the day was 120 degrees during the day. And then it's desert, so it doesn't hold any of that heat. And so it would get to nighttime and it would drop down to 75, 80 degrees. And that was cold. And we'd be wearing, snow gear around there, because it was just that 40-degree swing in temperatures like that. It just really affected you. And I came home before the road trip, had family time, and you're spending time with family. And I got home in middle of July, that summer vacation time. The family had this place on a lake, and let's go to the lake. Let's go to the lake and have a good time. And and I just remember it was 90 degrees out in Wisconsin, and I was sitting on the end of this dock wearing sweatshirt, jeans, like long sleeve shirt, sweatshirt, jeans, boots. I had all these like beach blankets wrapped around me because I was so cold. And I will always remember that. Was like everyone else was swimming and having a good time, and I was shivering on the end of this dock in the middle of July in Wisconsin.
Ooh, when your service ended, so did your service end then after your second tour? Am I getting my times right?
No,
Okay.
my contract was up while I was on my second tour, and
that's when
I decided I wasn't going to sign up to do more, and so I got out after that.
So on your second tour, is that when you became captain, or was it before that time?
Yep. So just as we were leaving, I became a captain.
Okay.
Me in charge of people is like, sometimes it's wild. It's a wild concept.
Can you tell us what the main duties of being a captain is during that tour? I know it could vary, but
yeah.
What were your main duties as a captain? And you can skip this question if you want me to.
No,
we can move on.
No. It's when you're trying to think of like how to sum it up in 5 minutes, because I mean you're a manager. You're a manager of managers. So now, like, you're a lieutenant, and you have 4 squads that are under you, and then you're doing, like, you're managing the squads, and each squad then has 2 to 3 teams in it, and they have their teams, and so it's 36 people. Like, how many places do you work that manage 36 people? Like, even the office I have now doesn't have 36 people in it, but as a 25-year-old kid, and you're just, you're leading people, and then you're a captain at 28. I was a captain, and then, it wasn't a company, this was like this team, but it was still a command of sorts in that. And, this time I had, I think 45, 45. I had 45 soldiers, and, we'd split into these 2 groups to try and knock out evaluating these prisons. And so you're going to, again, every Iraqi prison that we were going to turn detainees over to and evaluate it to this standard, and prison running as the way it was supposed to. And I was, so you're going around, you're evaluating these things, and I'll remember that, like having to get them to take these prisoners, and then working with their court system and the U.S. military that was with the courts, and then having to transfer paperwork to. There's that. I remember turkeys. I remember that one of the prisons we went to, there were turkeys. I had this mission where we went to this one prison that was just west of Missoula, and drove up to it. And we'd always try and like communicate, like you can't just send an email that was like, hey, we're coming on this date. And so you'd show up, and we'd have all the gun trucks and all the Humvees, and we'd stand out there in uniform, and I'd walk up there and and be like, I'm Captain Tileson, and I'm coming in to evaluate your prison. And most of the times they'd open the gate up, and I had this one prison that we go to, and he was just like, yeah, I'm not letting you in. Well, yeah, I got an interpreter. I'm cutting through that part of it, So I had an interpreter with me, and I tell the guy I'm coming in, and he calls the warden, and the warden walks down, and I always remember, like, it was this quarter mile from where the gate was to where the prison was. And we get there, and he calls him up, and then I have to watch as this guy like walks down this quarter mile desert trail to the road we were on. And he gets there, and he's like, yeah, I'm not letting you in unless you give me $100,000. And I was like, do you see what I have here? Like $100,000? Are you crazy? Like I don't have $100,000 on me. And I was like, this is me letting you know I'm coming back in 2 weeks, and I'm going inside your prison, and I'm going to look around. And so we, we went to the other spots, and then you get back, and you're the captain, so you have the reports that you had to write up. And like my team reported directly to the 2-star general that was there. And so I wrote my report up, and in there I had made the comment like, well, I have to go back to this prison because he wants $100,000. And I'm going to go back there in 2 weeks. And so we get ready, and it was the 2 weeks later about, and we're suiting up ready to hit the road because we were in Baghdad on that second tour, and so we're getting ready to drive up to Missoula, and this black SUV pulls up, and they're sitting there, and they start calling out like, Captain, this guy gets out of it. It was end up being this full bird colonel, and he's calling Captain Tileson, and I like, yeah, I'm over here. And so I walk over there. And I'm like, what do you need, sir? And he opens up this briefcase, and there's a stack, $100,000 cash. And he was just like, well, we want you to go see that prison. And I was like, sir, my report said, like, I'm going in there. Like, I'm going to walk in there. I'm a captain. I'm an armor captain. I got this team. Look at all these guns I got, like, I'm walking in there. We'll just drive over the gate and then fix it before we leave. And oh, we feel it's important that you give them the $100,000. And okay. So I had to sign a piece of paper that said I has taken custody of $100,000 cash, and I put it in my cargo pocket, and then drove 8 hours up there. And let me tell you, every soldier saw me take that, like the rumors started, the captain's holding $100,000 cash in his cargo pocket. Like, how crazy is that? and so we had to drive up there and all that stuff. And so we drove up there and did the right thing. And, I remember going there the next day, and they called him down, and he showed up, and I gave him the $100,000, and he opened the gate. Oh, please come here. Look at my prison. And he was so gracious, and he opened up all the doors, and we're writing stuff down because you hadn't been there, and it usually took us 2 days to evaluate a prison, and there was so much going on in that prison that like the one day ended, and then so we're like, well, we're coming back tomorrow. And he's like, oh yes sir, you come back tomorrow, and I'll open everything up for you, and it'll be great. And we left, and we stayed at the nearest U.S. Army base. And the next morning, we drive out there, and I get there, and the gate's closed, and I'm like, hey, let me in. And he's like, no, the warden wants to talk to you. I'm like, okay. And so then, same drill, like this guy, they page the warden, and I'm watching as this guy walks down, and I can tell it's not the same guy. And sure enough, it was the deputy warden was coming down, walked down, he got to the end of the street, and I'm like, hey, where's the warden? And he's like, he's gone. He's no longer with the warden. And I'm like, what do you mean he's no longer the warden? And he's like, he is not warden. I am warden now. And I was like, well, okay, let me in. And he goes, I want $100,000. I was just, I was like, no, he was supposed to share. So then I look at him and it's like quick goat thinking, which is like one of the biggest takeaways is just like, you got to be able to think quick when you're doing this stuff. And I was like, he was supposed to share that with all of you. Like that was for all that was the deal, was that he got $100,000 to share with all of you. So if he didn't share, that's your problem. And I'm sorry, but we paid $100,000. Like I can come and go as I please. And he thinks to himself a little bit and he's like, oh, okay, and he lets me in.
Oh my God. I mean, that is
right. That's a wild story.
That is a wild story.
Yeah, how do you make?
I don't think I asked you when your service ended, what did you do in the days and weeks, right? No, I don't think.
Yeah,
Okay.
I guess when I got out, I mean, if you want to talk about that, like when I got out of the service, we talk about the action adventure. Like you're an adrenaline junkie at that point. Like you've gone through gunfights and you've been blown up, and like you need your fix. Like where do you get that at? And sadly, some soldiers turn to the bottle and some get to, some unfortunate areas. And I went into firefighting. I was a volunteer firefighter after I got out, and I thought that would be a nice transition, where I would go fight fires. And that was, yeah, that was as close as I think I got to, feeling some of that again, was like the first time I was in a burning building. And so I did that. I had started the entrepreneurial stuff. I was big into trading stocks when I got out, so I was doing firefighting and stock trading when I got out, and then I transitioned into starting my own businesses and some of that typical 9 to 5 work, because you still got benefits you need and all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
What were the things that you're most looking forward to when you got out? Do we move on to the next?
No. You think of how silly some of this stuff is, like grass. Grass was, you're in a desert, and it is. You ever driven through northwestern Illinois where it's like the flat as far as the eye can see? So imagine that now covered in sand, and just desert sand as far as the eye can see. And it was neat, because I mean, again, I drove through all of Iraq. There's no part of Iraq I have not been to, and which is unique, to what many soldiers can say. A lot of them, they had their zones and they're in this zone, and it was like I've been as far south as Safwan, and I've been I've been farther north than Mosul. I mean, you want another crazy story? I was a couple miles away from those backpackers that got kidnapped by Iran, and I was like there when that happened. I remember getting the calls like, hey, we might need you to do this rescue mission. And we were like, oh, shit, and locking and loading stuff and getting ready to go, because we were the closest to that. And as far, that was east. Iran was east. And then there was the farthest I went west was this tiny military fob. They called it the Korean Village. Why, I don't know, but that was just the fob name they'd given it, but it was neat to see all that. And I guess where I'm going is like, so you get some palm trees in the farther north, but everything's covered in dust. Everything's covered in sand, and where you go, and so there's not a lot of green. And coming from Wisconsin, you miss green, you miss fall. There's no weather changing. There's not snow on the ground, or any of that. And probably hence why I went to the woods, like when I first got home, because it was just, I missed green, and that was what I really wanted to see when I got back. And grass. Grass.
That's really beautiful. Did your military experience influence your thinking about war or the general military?
Yeah. It's those who have fought, like, understand the necessity of it, but also are the biggest ones to never wish to see it on anyone else. Like we talked about adrenaline rushes, and like you're in a firefight, like that is, uh, like it's a crazy, crazy addiction. I never want to be in another gunfight, but I yearn to be in another gunfight. Like as weird as that is, like you never feel more alive than that. But then at the same point, you watch what's going on in the news with Ukraine. If you're showing this like 20 years from now, I don't know what that's going to look like. Like I'm sitting here talking about Ukraine, and I mean, but you get what I'm saying is like you never want to see you never want to see those acts of violence because of like you see the devastation of it. And I lost friends over there. I lost one of my soldiers on the first tour, and Corporal Stephen Kastner was his name, and he was killed by a roadside bomb. Like our first week in country. I mean, you want to talk about a gut punch? Like that was, and so you don't want to see that stuff as much as it's, we can sit here and talk about it, and we can talk about the benefits of it, and the things I loved about the service and those kind of things. But I don't wish that stuff on anyone.
Thank you for sharing that.
No.
How did your service and experiences affect your life?
Yeah, I learned a lot. I'm so thankful for my time in the service. I wouldn't again take any of it back. And you have your friends, and my friends are sitting here watching me record this, and that's great. And I love every minute of it, and the management stuff. And I always really loved management and organization and planning, and all those things that go into it. And I think that's what's really helped me in my career and my life. After I got out, and I don't want to toot my own horn, but like I have a 9 to 5 job. I work for the state of Wisconsin. I own Pups Unleashed dog daycare in town. I own 20% of downtown Stoughton. I've just been on this buying spree of buildings. I just started another business in downtown, like an entertainment business in downtown, and then I'm getting ready to launch a clothing company. And how do you sit there and like, well, how can you do all that? Like that's so crazy. Where do you have the time? And it's like it's those organization skills, and that you know when you're in, and it's a 24/7 job, and you are just always working. And I think I translated a lot of that to like, well, yeah, you're getting paid only 30 cents an hour when you're in the army because you're doing 24/7, and you're up at midnight, and then you're up at 6 a.m. the next day, and then you're working till 7 p.m. at night. And like how much free time do you get? And I translated a lot of that to I can do this, but now I'm going to do it for me, and I'm gonna make some money. How do you take that? And it's been great, and those skills that you learn, and some of those things, because it's not like I was a 4.0 student. I wasn't bad at school, but I lived life, and I enjoyed what I did around that stuff. But I think the army, and then really thrust it into, because it was like, well, I graduated college, and I graduated, and I went right to tank school, and then I got out of tank school, and they're like, this is your unit, and we went right to Iraq. So I was like less than a year. I mean, because you think of like tank school was 6 months. It's a 6 month course, and then I get attached to my unit, and we went to our pre-mobilization site, and that was 3 months, and then we were in Iraq. And so it was.
Is there anything you would like to add that was not covered in this interview?
Yeah, I thank Stoughton. I thank this town. This town is so kind and generous to its veterans, and I think you really see a lot of that at the VFW and the Legion posts that are in town here, which we're all members of both of them. Just but that's still serving that Adam talked about. And it's service to something that is more than yourself. That selfless service, I guess, when you think of that, is, you want to see change in the world. You're probably never going to be that top person that's making those changes, but there is so much just as one person that you can change. And, like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, I changed Iraq war. Like, Lieutenant Tileson or Captain Tileson with $100,000 really changed stuff. But, it's those things that you can do. And then you get out and, look at those of us that are here and the people that you're going to see on here is that we volunteer, and we volunteer at the VFW and the Legion, and we volunteer to continue on for veterans benefits, and we all fight for that, and to make sure that past veterans and future veterans are taken care of. And we volunteer with our high school sports teams for the kids, and we volunteer at with city government, and we volunteer with our churches, and we volunteer with all these different things. And it's like, so you think of, and again, like talking about all those things I do, and I can just rattle off all these volunteer things that I'm still a part of. And it is that selfless service, or still serving. That is one of our mottos at the VFW, is how can you still serve? And that is important. And I would say that is an important lesson for everyone to take. I'm not saying go put on a uniform and let's do tanks and infantry, like, whee! It's the second time I got to use that, but it's those things that you can do to improve your community, your state, your nation, your beliefs is really important.
Thank you for your service, Jordan.
Thank you.
Was there anything that made the transition easier when you got back home?
Yeah, so I'd mentioned that I had a very difficult transition from leaving the Army and like coming back to the civilian life, if you will. And so, as Rob and Adam, and I'm sure many of the other veterans are going to talk to you about, it's they'll teach you to put the uniform on. They don't teach you to take it off. And so, there's a lot of great benefits that are out there, and, things like Adam does to help with the veteran community to get that kind of help. But it's tough, and then you don't know how to accept it, because, as many of these other veterans that are going to talk are very modest, hardworking, keep their head down. I'm a warrior, keep fighting. And they don't know how to ask for help unless it's other people that they've served with, or especially those that they have fought with. Like people that I have shot guns with in combat, I trust 100%. Like I haven't seen some of these guys for years, but I could drop off my most prized possession to them and would have nothing but trust for them to take care of it and treat it as well as I do. And whether that's another family member, money, any object whatsoever. And, so you have that kind of trust. And, so I was pretty messed up, especially after the first tour, because that's where I saw the most combat. And then the second tour was just really messed up with, wild stories of $100,000, and then having to make a death penalty prison run functionally well, and you don't think about it till you get home, and at first you're just like, oh, okay, like, oh, that's my job, yeah, okay, I'll do that, sir, and you just carry on and you do what you're supposed to. And then when you get back and you're talking to friends about, like, I'm 27 now and I was a captain and I've seen all these things, and your friends are like, I'm on year 2 of my career, or oh, we just got married, and like that life balance of where and what people have experienced are way off from that. And I missed a lot of my friends' weddings and kids and that kind of stuff because I was gone. I was in the service, or I was traveling around the country, and so you miss out on a lot of that stuff. But the first real sign when I reflect back was I had my first panic attack in downtown Tokyo. And I was, and I should have known that was like where I was really messed up, because you're hanging out with soldiers, and so I always trusted soldiers, because you're, like, you serve together, you fight together, you have that, and then you're off doing these missions and things. And then I'm in downtown Tokyo, and I'm with some people. I hadn't served with them. I was just kind of attached to this unit to help train the Japanese Defense Force, and so I didn't really know a lot of these people well. And then I'm hanging out with the Japanese Army, and we were walking through this highly populated area, and there were tall buildings, and it was sensory overload, and you get the tightness, and everything's processing, right? Like you're looking for snipers on the roof, you're looking at trash on the road, you're looking at vehicles that are going by, and you don't know when you can, just everything was snapping so quickly that I fucking collapsed. Sorry. There it is. I gotta be the first one to drop an F-bomb. I'll give you a second. Edit it in. Let me try and get my head back in the same spot. And I collapsed in the streets of Tokyo, and I blew it off oh no, you didn't want to tell your friends oh, it's a panic attack, and I need help, and someone needs to help me. You're like, oh, I just been drinking, guys. You're just trying to pass it off as nothing because you got to be tough, and I was a lieutenant promotable. I was about to be captain, and was already getting my orders to go on my second tour, and then to be like, oh no, I'm having panic attacks, I'm having problems, and then you can't go overseas now, stuff like that, and you didn't want to face that kind of stuff. And it happened the one time, but then again, then I'm back overseas, and we're doing combat missions, and I felt fine. I was with people I'd trust and I trained, and so you're just keep going, and oh, that was a one-time thing, and you don't think about that. And then you get out, and I did the firefighting, and I was a paramedic and a firefighter, and I got my little taste of action adventure as I was starting to do business, and the other little things that I did to earn money and just to volunteer to try and have that. And again, then you're around people you train and you trust with, and you're going into burning buildings with these people, or you're heart attacks and medical emergencies and people at their worst parts of their life, and you're completely comfortable in those situations because you're around people you trust, and you just get crappy situations that you just get it. And but I was angry. I was so angry, and like these guys talked about, and I had real anger problems and frustration. And Rob talks about that I'm used to, this is where this goes, this is where they're supposed to be. Why does this not make sense to you? This makes sense to me. Why are you freaking out? Oh yeah, this person's in a car accident and their body's over here and legs are over here, and we're cutting them out, and you're trying to do life-saving stuff, and the new guy's over there, so you're really you're angry at so many things in life. I was angry that I lost Corporal Stephen Kastner. I was angry. Really, you reflect on that stuff, and you reflect back on what's worth it, what's not. Why am I here? Why him? Why not me? And, so I feel justifiable that I was angry. I was angry at everything. I didn't adjust well. Why I went and hid in the woods for a little bit, I was my own little Unabomber, if you will. Not you get what I'm saying. It's, and it took help. It took that needing to stand up to say, I need help. I need help with this. And, it deteriorated my relationship with my family. But, therapy really helped for that. And I saw, a counselor, and we were able to talk through a lot of those things, and able to rationalize what you can, and, coming to the realization of did someone shoot at you today? No? Did you get blown up today? No? It's a good day. I drive into work, I drive to my businesses, buildings, all that stuff. And, don't have to freak out. I mean, you could get verschnickered by a car driving in. But if no one shot at me today, today's a good day. And you know, faith, faith got me through that. My religion, I don't know how much we can talk about with kids in these days, but my Catholic faith got me through a lot of that, and praying for forgiveness, forgiveness for the things that uh, I did. And some, you can Monday morning quarterback it and look back and be like, was that really the right action? Like I can remember, uh, Corporal Kastner got killed, and we were driving down that road 3 days later, and you know, we saw a young Iraqi male, walking down the side of the road wearing his hat, and we stopped and we beat the shit out of that kid. Yeah, I know, man. It's like I mean, angry, and this young Iraqi probably didn't know like what was going on or why he was getting it, and we didn't have an interpreter for that type mission, and you think about of those things, and like, I mean, we didn't kill him, like, but you got, 12 soldiers just whooping on this kid that doesn't know any better because he found the boonie cap that had Kastner's name on it, and he's not supposed to be wearing it, and it sticks out like a sore thumb, and you're just driving down the road and you see that, and it was like, stop the convoy. And then, this kid, before he knows it, here's 12 soldiers sitting around him. And then how does that react to how does that translate into the civilian side when he goes home and he's black and blue, that he tells his family that the soldiers came and kicked the shit out of him for no reason because he doesn't know. So yeah, I was angry, and the counseling helped. My faith helped get over a lot of that. And I had a service dog who really helped because you know, transition, I guess, as best I can. I still can't go to high populated areas unless I am with another soldier or someone that I served with or that I trust. I can't go to festivals. I can't go to large populated areas. Otherwise, I will have a panic attack. So, you know, that's as cool as that gets. But which leads us then to the next question of, like the VFW. And when I got out, I didn't want to go hang out with a bunch of old guys that were just telling war stories because you meet other soldiers that want to, well, I was in the shit more than you were, and oh, I did this, so that makes me tougher than you, and uh, you know, and we all served. I mean, these guys are great, and the other people that you're going to meet and they're going to be on this TV are they're all great men and women who have stood up and served their country, and that's awesome. And so what? I was a uh, private who went to sergeant, who went to lieutenant, who went to captain. And just because I was a captain doesn't mean like, oh, fancy. Like, I'm too fancy to hang out with these young enlisted folks. Let me adjust my tie. You know, these are my friends. These are, some of my best friends that I've made from doing this. And so I didn't sign up at first, but it wasn't until uh, COVID and everything was shut down, and I kept myself busy with business. I had my businesses when I transitioned out and got into business and firefighting and trying to do all this other stuff and work because idle work makes for the devil's hands kind of stuff, and I'm clearly a troublemaker. So, just got to stay busy with stuff. And COVID hit, and you got nothing to do. And the old commander, Eileen Tape, like, called me up one day out of the blue, and I'd been a member. I'd signed up. I mean, like, to show, like, I was so angry. Uh, the first time I had moved to town, and the Army Navy game was on. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go watch the Army Navy game, but I don't want to watch it alone. I want to sit around and, have a beer and have a pizza and watch the game. And where's the best place to do that? VFW. Who's going to show the Army Navy game on TV? The VFW would do that. So I went down to the VFW post here in Stoughton, and I walked in on a Saturday, and there were some people hanging out there and not doing too much, and I ordered a beer, and it got time for the game, and no one turned the TV on, and like I remember like waiting a little bit because I had adjusted somewhat, so I was like, okay, be patient, and then the TV didn't turn on, and the TV didn't turn on, and I got to like 5 minutes after the game would have started, and I pounded my fist on the bar really hard, and I was just like, what kind of establishment is this that doesn't show the Army Navy game? This is a VFW, and you should be showing this. And of course, it was a little more colorful what I said because I'm still a little angry. And they fumbled and they got the remotes and they changed it, and the Army Navy game was on. And I'll remember that because that was the year that it snowed. You guys remember that? It snowed and Army wore all white, and like you couldn't see the Army football players out there because it was just this snowstorm and they were all wearing white. It was like the one time Army got camouflage right. and and Eileen was the commander, and she came down and, oh, you should sign up and it's important. And I always knew it was important. I just had never gotten around to it. So I signed up and never came to any of the meetings, never did that because I really didn't want to hang out with the older vets, and COVID came, and then all the volunteering kind of ended because everyone was on lockdown, and I got a random phone call from Eileen that was just like, well, we're having a meeting, you want to come by? And sure. So I went, and didn't know anyone there, and I met Rob that night, and I was like, we're gonna be best friends. Like, what's your favorite magazine? Home and Garden? Your favorite dinosaur? Velociraptor? Did we just become best friends?
Yep.
Yep. So, and that's how it got. It was I saw other younger vets like me, and I think that was really what completed my transition, I would say, is just being able to reconnect with younger vets in the community, and to have that and to see such a strong uh, goal, I guess, for the community. Like, you look at Rob, and he's so passionate about this town, and he's so passionate about just doing good for the town and doing good for other veterans. Uh, you know, that I was just like, I'm all in. Like, let's do this. Like, I'm ready to go. And the things we have done, to fix up the establishment, to help around, with pizzas or other community events, and to be able to do that stuff. And I keep looking at Rob when I look this way. So, you know, uh, it's amazing. It is an amazing feeling to see that. And then you start to make more friends, and you branch out, and you get to doing district level things at the VFW, which is, like, this is all elected who does what, and you got commanders and vice commanders and quartermasters and all these different positions to fill, and to see the young vets taking over, and then you get involved at the state level because like fighting for veterans' rights or lobbying for those, are super important to do, and someone's got to do it, and we like stepping up, and that's where then I met Adam, and we became good friends from that. And then, oh, he lives in town. Well, why aren't you at our post? Like, what's going on here? And then you get them to transfer down. You get more younger vets and all the people to do that and explain uh, that vision of making Stoughton as best a place as possible. That's not just, like, well, sure, you can own a business in town, and sure, you can own buildings in downtown, but what do you do for Stoughton? Like, what do you do to make your community and your town the best place possible to live? And that selfless thought of just, you know, I like this place. I like it here. I'm gonna grow old here. My friends are here now. Like, everyone I love in life is right here in this town, and You know, I can't think of, I mean, of course, other than, so like there's a ton of soldiers all over the place, but you know, like these friends I've made here are life friends forever and always. And that is, you know, and that's again what drives you. Because when you fight, you know, and I know this is a cliche movie line, but it is like as real as it gets of just you don't fight because the U.S. government said like I need you to go to Iraq uh and sell democracy. You know, like I don't need you to do this or however you want to look at it. So you know, like oh hey, you're gonna go out and find bad guys and do them. And like oh, that's you go out there because well you get assigned a job, but then you fight because of the people who are next to you on your left and your right, and you know like because these are your friends now, and you know you're ready to do whatever it takes to keep them as safe as possible and to make sure that they get home to their wives and kids and all that stuff. So you know then to come here and to translate that to a small little club, you know? Like, here's this little club in Stoughton, Wisconsin that's filled with people that have this belief of it is doing good because the people to your left and right also want to do good. And you are going to go out there and you're going to clean things and you're going to fix things up and you're going to volunteer in all these other crazy organizations just to represent veterans and to represent that we give a crap about everything that goes on around here. That this is home.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah. It's those kind of things. Because, you know, like most people, they get up and they go to work and they go home. And it's like Rob's talking about is where's that purpose and where's that drive and stuff like that. And everyone translates it differently. You know, for me, the drive led to all these side careers, you know, like you start the dog daycare and I make the jokes that it's like, well, you see an opportunity to make money and, you know, like, hey, that's great. But then it took me 3 years from the concept of like, I'm going to start a dog daycare in Stoughton. And it took me 3 years to open my doors. I had to change the laws in the town. You had to find a spot. Then you had to get the, you know, all the paperwork that goes with it to start this business in the town, and then you want it to be a good part of the community, that it's not just like, well, I'm here to make money from the people of Stoughton. Like, no, I love dogs and these are people that also love their dogs, and you know like you want to be a good part, so when people you know look on that organization that they say yeah, that's a good person who wants to do good things and wants to you know make this town better. You know, I mean, it's a great town. I love it here. I love this town so much, but there's always things you can do to continue to make things better.